Have you ever noticed that constant voice in your head, the stream of thoughts that never seems to stop? For most people, this inner dialogue becomes so familiar, so constant, that they assume it must be who they are. But what if it isn't? What if behind every thought, there is something far greater, something that has always been present, yet is rarely noticed? Most of us live trapped in this whirlwind of mental noise. It shapes our moods, identities, and even our decisions. And because we are so immersed in it, we seldom pause to question whether it truly represents us. But every so often, something strange happens. The noise quiets down, even for just a moment. The endless chatter fades, and in its place appears a silence, subtle but profound. What arises in that silence? A deeper awareness, a presence, a sense that beyond all thought, there is something greater observing. This moment of pause is where awakening begins. It's like suddenly finding a window that was always there, but covered. For the first time, you glimpse reality without the distortion of constant thought. And in that clarity, you feel a deeper connection, one that was always with you, but had gone unnoticed. This is the invitation of higher consciousness, not to get lost in the labyrinth of your thoughts, but to return to the present moment where true awareness is revealed. If you've ever experienced even a flicker of this, you know how powerful it is. Maybe you felt it standing before a breathtaking sunset, or in a moment of stillness when everything else faded away. For a brief instant, you weren't trapped in the voice in your head, you simply were. These glimpses are not accidents. They are signs that beyond the ceaseless narrative of the mind, there is a deeper truth waiting to be recognized. As you begin to observe your thoughts more consciously, something subtle but life-changing happens. You realize that thoughts don't actually belong to you. They arise on their own, like clouds passing through the sky. This realization can feel disorienting at first, because we're taught to believe that our thoughts are who we are. Yet when you truly pay attention, you see that most of them appear automatically, uninvited, unplanned, and often repetitive. This leads us to a profound question. Do you think your thoughts, or are you being thought by them? For most people, the mind runs almost entirely on autopilot. It judges, it remembers, it projects into the future, and without noticing it, we identify with this stream. We start believing the stories it tells, that we are our regrets, anxieties, and even our desires. This identification creates a false self, a fragile identity built entirely from the flow of thought. But here's the truth. Thought is not the same as consciousness. Thought is limited. It is a product of memory and conditioning. It is bound by time, shaped by what has happened in the past or what might happen in the future. Consciousness, on the other hand, is timeless. It exists in the pure immediacy of the present moment. It doesn't judge, compare, or label. It simply is. Imagine this. You stand before a magnificent sunset. If you're caught in thought, your mind immediately comments, "What a beautiful sunset. I should come here more often." Yet in that very moment, you stepped away from the experience itself. You traded presence for mental commentary. Now imagine the same moment without thought. No judgment, no labeling, no desire for it to be any different. You simply observe. The colors, the silence, the sheer aliveness of the scene. Time dissolves and you feel not separate from life, but deeply one with it. That stillness, that space where the sunset is simply experienced without thought, is higher consciousness. It is the arising awareness that sees beyond the chatter of the mind. And the difference is not just philosophical, it's deeply practical. When you live identified with thought, you are endlessly carried into the past and future, reliving old pains or anticipating what is yet to come. But when you rest in awareness, you step into freedom. The ego dissolves. The weight of constant mental stories falls away, and in its place emerges presence, something calm, clear, and deeply alive. This shift from being controlled by thoughts to becoming the conscious observer of them is the foundation of spiritual awakening. Even as we start to see the difference between thought and awareness, awakening rarely arrives as a single permanent transformation. Instead, it tends to unfold in moments, brief flashes when the grip of thought loosens and presence shines through. These moments can be so subtle that we hardly notice them. Perhaps you're walking down a familiar street and suddenly the noise in your head quiets. For a few seconds, you hear only the sound of your footsteps, the breeze against your skin, the colors of the world around you. In that instant, the weight of past and future disappears. You simply exist, here in the now, and with it comes a profound, though delicate, sense of peace. Nature often awakens these flashes. Imagine standing before the ocean or looking at a mountain range. For a moment, your thoughts dissolve into the vastness before you. You are no longer the one observing the scene. You and the scene are one. The waves crash, the wind moves, and you are part of it all. This is presence, a brief lifting of the veil of thought. But these moments aren't confined to grand landscapes. They can happen in the most ordinary settings. A glance into the eyes of a child before they have learned the weight of language and concepts. In that gaze, there is purity, no past, no future, only being. Meeting that innocence draws you into the same stillness. The most important thing to recognize about these flashes is that they are not intellectual. They don't come from analyzing or striving to achieve something spiritual. They simply happen. And the more you remain open, the more frequently they arise. These glimpses, however brief, plant seeds within us. Over time, the flashes lengthen. Presence begins to weave itself into ordinary moments of life while you cook, walk, or even converse with others. The awakening is not a sudden event, but a gradual deepening into a new way of being. If thought dominates most of our existence, then where does true freedom lie? The answer is in what could be called inner space, the silent gap between thoughts, the spaciousness that exists before and after the mind's commentary. This space isn't empty in the dull sense of the word. It is alive, vibrant, and deeply peaceful. It is the dimension of consciousness itself, untouched by the mind's stories. The problem is that we seldom notice it because our attention is so absorbed by the constant stream of thinking. A classic Zen metaphor describes this using the image of a cup. A classic Zen metaphor describes this using the image of a cup. If the cup is overflowing, nothing new can enter. Similarly, when the mind is overflowing with thought, there is no room for awareness. Creating inner space is like emptying the cup, allowing space for presence to arise. One of the simplest gateways to this space is the breath. The breath is always here, always present. The moment you bring your attention to it, even for a few seconds, thinking loosens its grip. Another gateway is through the senses, paying attention to the sound of your footsteps, the rustle of leaves, or the sensation of touch grounds you in the now. In these small openings, the mind recedes and presence emerges. At first, these gaps may feel fleeting, but with practice, they expand. The more you allow these pauses, the more your daily life shifts. Problems feel lighter because they are no longer inflated by constant mental narration. Stress loses its power because it cannot survive in the clarity of pure presence. And this change doesn't just affect you internally. When you are present, your relationships transform. Instead of reacting through ego and old patterns, you respond genuinely. Communication becomes clearer, listening becomes deeper, and connection feels more authentic. And others sense it too, even if unconsciously, because presence carries its own undeniable energy. Over time, living in this way dissolves the rigid idea of a fixed identity. You begin to see that you are not your thoughts, your labels, or your past. You are the awareness in which all of it happens. This realization doesn't remove challenges from life, but it radically transforms your relationship with them. Presence is not just a spiritual concept, it is a living practice, available at every moment. And each time you return to it, even for just a breath, you align yourself with the essence of true awakening. In conclusion, awakening in the end is not about escaping life or achieving some distant, mystical state. It is about learning to return again and again to the presence that has always been here. It's about noticing the silent awareness beneath every thought, the stillness that remains even when the mind is restless. We often imagine awakening as a lightning strike, a single life-changing revelation, but in truth, it is usually more like dawn, gradual, quiet, soft at first, then steadily brightening. Each moment of awareness, each glimpse of silence, each flash of presence is another ray of light dissolving the darkness of unconscious living. The voice in your head will continue. The mind will keep producing thoughts. It is its nature to do so. But when you see that you are not your thoughts, but the awareness that notices them, you are free. That freedom is not abstract. It is practical, immediate, and alive. It gives you clarity in difficult moments, peace in the midst of chaos, and authenticity in your relationships. And perhaps most importantly, it reconnects you with the essence of life itself. You no longer chase meaning in the future or cling to stories of the past. Instead, you discover the richness of being here, now, fully awake to this moment. Awakening is not something to strive for, it is something to remember. A return to the truth of what you are beyond thought, beyond identity, beyond time. Each pause, each breath, each moment of presence is an opening into that truth. So as you go forward, carry this simple practice with you. Notice the spaces between your thoughts. Notice the mind when silence appears. Notice when presence calls you back from the noise of the mind. In those moments, you are already awake. For walking through this journey with me. If this message resonated with you, I invite you to subscribe, to share it with those who may need this reminder, and to reflect in the comments on your own experiences with awakening and presence. Until next time, stay centered, stay focused, stay present.